People call you stubborn, usually because you wouldn't throw something out. And if you've ever stayed up past midnight with your hands on something, most people would have already replaced a piece of furniture, an engine, a relationship with complicated edges. You know the label they reach for. Sentimental, behind the times, can't let go. That label has followed you for years. Psychology has a name for what's actually happening. It sounds nothing like stubbornness. We live in a culture built around replacement. Phones are designed to be swapped every 2 years. Subscriptions replace ownership because ownership implies long-term commitment. Friendships get unfollowed. Careers get pivoted. The whole architecture of modern life is optimized to make replacing easier than repairing. And for most people, that's not a problem. It's just how things work. When something breaks, the calculus is quick. Is fixing this worth the cost? For most brains, the answer is usually no. That's not a character flaw. That's efficiency. But then there's a subset of people for whom that calculus never quite computes. You run the same numbers and get a completely different answer. Most people look at a broken thing and see the damage. You look at the same thing and see what it was and what it still could be. That's not selective vision. In 2006, psychologist Carol Dweck at Stanford published foundational research distinguishing two fundamentally different orientations toward challenge. People with what she called a growth mindset don't experience a broken thing as a finished thing. They experience it as unfinished. Put two people in front of the same failing project, one sees a dead end, one sees a problem that hasn't been solved the right way yet. Same information, completely different conclusions. That difference in perception isn't attitude, it's wiring, and it shapes every decision that follows. Most people end the sentence when something breaks. You start a new one. It also lives in your body. When something fixable gets discarded, a tool, a project, a person, you put real hours into something registers. Not loud, not dramatic. A small wrongness. Like a gear that almost catches but doesn't quite. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Richard Thaler gave this a name. Research published in the Journal of Political Economy identified what they called the endowment effect. The longer you've invested in something, the more it belongs to your psychological landscape, not just your practical one. This is why throwing it away doesn't feel like clearing space. It feels like cutting something off. The effort you put in becomes part of how you identify with the object. Discarding it doesn't just remove the thing, it erases the investment. And your brain, wired the way it is, was never built to treat those two things as equivalent. The instinct doesn't stay contained to objects. You carry it into work, into friendships, into people most others quietly wrote off a long time ago. And this is where it gets precise, because the cost here is real. Research by Deci and Ryan on self-determination theory shows that people oriented toward mastery don't process failure as conclusion. When something stops working, their first move isn't exit, it's re-examination. They look for the angle that hasn't been tried. The problem is, that same quality that makes you stay when others leave also means you absorb the cost of staying longer, harder, with more of yourself on the line than people who let go earlier. A man sat in a management review. The subject was a junior hire 18 months in, inconsistent numbers, missed deadlines, the same read from everyone in the room. The conversation was moving toward a conclusion. He stayed quiet through most of it. At the end, he said 5 words. Give me 60 more days. No argument, no speech. Just those 5 words. They gave him the 60 days. He didn't overhaul the guy's role, he shifted it, moved him onto problems that fit how he actually thought. Day 63. The same person closed the biggest account of the quarter. Not because someone replaced him, because one person looked at him and decided the story wasn't finished yet. That's not a patient story. That's a story about how a brain that calculates differently sees opportunity in exactly the places everyone else stopped looking. But here's the question worth sitting with honestly. Are you staying because you genuinely see what's still there, or because walking away feels like admitting defeat? Both look like loyalty from the outside. Both feel like commitment from the inside. But they lead to entirely different places. One of them builds something, the other just delays. And only, in the specific situations you're carrying right now, which one is actually running. That distinction is worth more than anything this video can give you. People don't call you persistent. They call you stubborn. And after enough years of hearing it, part of you starts to wonder if they're right. In 2016, Angela Duckworth published research defining what she called grit, perseverance of effort sustained over time, specifically when easier alternatives exist. The key finding wasn't that gritty people are incapable of quitting. It was that for them, abandonment is psychologically costlier than adaptation. You weren't choosing the hard road because you enjoy difficulty. Your brain assigns value differently than most. It weights history. It weights potential. It weights what something could become against what it currently is. And that calculation run consistently. Across years, across relationships, across everything you've touched, is what makes you different from someone who simply replaces. If you're a man, there's rarely been a language for this. Nobody handed you words for why you kept the old truck running past the point of obvious financial sense. Why you stayed in a job, a city, a marriage, a friendship long after most people would have moved on. Why you can walk through someone's house and immediately notice what could be salvaged in a room everyone else would tear down. Other men notice these things about you. They don't always say much, but there's a specific kind of quiet respect that passes when someone watches you refuse to quit on something the rest of the room already gave up on, an acknowledgement that crosses without needing to be spoken. And sometimes the people you stayed for, the things you refused to throw out, become the ones that define you. Not because they were easy, because they were worth it. And you were the only one who knew that early enough to matter. Some things hold differently after they've been broken and put back together, not despite the damage, because of it. Because now you know exactly where the weak points are, what the structure can actually take, and how to build around what failed. You've spent your life understanding that. Most people never get there, because they replaced it before they could. Not everything broken is finished. You've always known the difference. Which one hit closest to home, the objects, the work, or the people? Drop it in the comments. And if you know someone who stays when everyone else has already left, send this to them. Sometimes just hearing it named changes everything.